Chapter 20, The Boniface Estate. Mrs. Frisbee said, "Jonathan and Mr. A just got the screen open." "Yes," Nicodemus said, "and without them I doubt that we could have done it. The steel frame was strong, the bolt was secure, and the wire so stiff we could not have bent it enough for one of us to go through. So we were glad they were with us and asked them if they would, after all, like to stay with us. Since there were only two of them, they said they would, for the time being at least." And now began a journey that was to last with some interruptions for almost 2 years. Parts of it were pleasant. It was a joyful feeling at first to be free again and to get those laboratory collars off, and parts of it were terrible. I have made notes about all of it, and if the time ever comes when rats publish books of their own, I intend to write a book about it. It would be a long book full of trouble and danger, too much to tell now. It was one of the dangerous times that I lost my eye and got the scar you can see on my face. But we did have some happy times and some pieces of great luck, too particular, that helped to explain how we got here and what our plans are now. It was early summer when we got out. We had known that beforehand. We could tell by the lateness of the light through the windows, though it was dark when we finally stood on the roof. We had no trouble getting down the side of the building, however. There were downspouts in the corners with plenty of toe holds. We dropped the screwdriver and spool of thread into one of these. A little lower there was ivy, and we were all good climbers. There was moonlight to see by. In less than 15 minutes we were on the ground. Staying in the darkest shadows under the bushes when we could, we sped away from Nim, not knowing or caring at first which direction we were going. Nobody saw us. During the next few weeks we lived as we could. We had, in a way, to learn all over again how to get along. For although the world outside the laboratory was the same, we ourselves were different. We were a couple of times reduced to eating from dumps and garbage cans. But knowing how to read, we quickly learned to recognize signs on buildings, groceries, supermarket, meats and vegetables, for instance. Let us always know that there was food inside for the taking. And once inside a supermarket at night, they always leave a few lights on. We could even read the signs on the wall directing us to Section 8 for dairy products, cheese, Section 3 for baked goods, and so on. In the country, there were barns and silos stocked with grain and corn and chicken houses full of eggs. Occasionally, we came upon other rats, and a few times we talked with them, but not for long, because after just a few words, they would begin to look at us strangely and edge away. Somehow they could tell we were different. I think we even looked different. Either the diet or injections at Nim had made us bigger and stronger than other rats, and all the strange rats we saw looked to us surprisingly weak and puny. So we were set apart from even our own kind. It was while we were in the country that we had our first important stroke of luck. We had just decided, after nearly 4 months of freedom and constant roving, to find a place to settle down, if not permanently, at least for the winter. We thought it should be in the country, not too far from a town, so that we would have access to grocery stores as well as barns and gardens. It was about this time, too, that I began to wonder and worry somewhat about the fact that whatever we ate, whatever we needed, must always be stolen. Rats always lived that way. And yet why? I talked to some of the others about this. It was the beginning of the discontent, an idea that kept growing, although slowly. The season was autumn. We were walking one evening down a winding country road. We never walked really on the road, but along the edge so that we could vanish into the bushes or a ditch if anyone came along. You can imagine that with 20 rats and 2 mice traveling in procession, it would cause some comment, and we did not want that. As we walked, we reached a very high fence of wrought iron, the kind that looks like a row of black iron spears fastened together, with pointed tops, an expensive fence surrounding a large estate with a big, expensive-looking house in the middle, and well-kept grounds and gardens. We walked along past this fence until we reached a gate. "There's nobody living in there," said Justin. "How do you know?" "The gate's padlocked, and look, dead weeds are standing outside of it, not even bent. Nobody's driven here for a while." The house had a quiet, deserted look. There was a letter box in front, hanging, open, empty. "I wonder if we could get in," Jenner said. "Why should we? It's a big place. It would have a big pantry, big cupboard, big freezer. If it's as empty as it looks." We turned around the grounds, moving cautiously, and from beneath some bushes we watched the windows. As dusk fell, lights came on and the gates padlocked. And look, dead weeds standing outside it, not even bent. Nobody's driven in here for a while. The house had a quiet, deserted look. There was a letterbox in front hanging, open, empty. I wonder if we could get in, Jenner said. Why should we? It's a big place. It would have a big pantry, big cupboard, big freezer. If it's as empty as it looks. We turned into the grounds, moving cautiously, and from beneath some bushes we watched the windows. As dusk fell, lights came on in several of them, both upstairs and down. Jenner said, "That's supposed to make us think there's someone there." "Yes," said Justin, "but there isn't. I could see one of the lamps when it came on. There was nobody near it, and they all came on at the same time. Automatic switches to keep burglars away." "Well, they're not keeping me away," said Justin. He ran to the house, climbed on one of the windowsills, and looked in. He tried another, then came back. "Nobody," he said. So we went in. We found a small window in the back with a cracked pane, knocked out one corner of the glass, and climbed through. At first, we planned to look for food. We found it, too, enough to last us for a year or more. As Jennifer had predicted, there was a big freezer and well-stocked, bread, meat, vegetables, everything, and a whole room of shelves covered with tinned food. The tins baffled us at first, as they had in the grocery stores. We could read what was in them, but we couldn't get it out. Then Arthur found a machine on the kitchen counter. He read the instructions on the side of it. Slide tin under cutter and press switch. We tried it. The tin turned slowly around in the machine, and when we pulled it out, the top had been cut free. I'll always remember what was in that first tin. Vegetable soup. Delicious. After we had eaten, we wandered around the house. It was a rich man's mansion, with beautiful furniture and fine rugs and carpeting on the floor. There was a crystal chandelier in the dining room and a big stone fireplace in the living room. But the greatest treasure of all, for us, was in the study. This was a large rectangular room with walnut paneling, a walnut desk, leather chairs, and walls lined to the ceiling with books. Thousands of books, about every subject you could think of. There were shelves of paperbacks, there were encyclopedias, histories, novels, philosophies, and textbooks of physics, chemistry, electrical engineering, and others, more than I can name. Luckily, there was even one of those small ladders on wheels that they used in some libraries to get to the top shelves. Well, we fell on those books with even more appetite than on the food, and in the end, we moved into the house and stayed all winter. We could do that, it turned out, without much fear of discovery. We learned that from some newspaper cuttings I found on the desk in the study. They were about a wedding, and most of them showed pictures of a newly married couple leaving a house to begin their honeymoon. The groom was Mr. Gordon Boniface, heir to the gold Stetson fortune, and the house they were leaving was the house we were all in. According to the clippings, they were going on a trip all the way around the world. They were coming back to the Boniface Estate in May. Until then, it was our estate. Oh, there was a caretaker gardener who came in 3 times a week, and once in a while he would check on the house in a cursory sort of way. That is, he would unlock the front door, glance around to see that everything looked all right, and then lock it and leave. But he didn't live there. He lived in a small house down the road. And we were expecting him when he came. We had figured it out from the way the place was kept up, the lawns mowed, the leaves raked, the gardens weeded and watered, that there had been somebody working on it. So we posted a watch, saw him coming, and kept watching him all the time he was there. And we made for sure, when he looked in the house, that everything did look all right. This involved a certain amount of work. We had to haul our empty tin cans and other rubbish at night out into a hidden place in the woods quite far from the house. We cleaned up after ourselves carefully. We learned how to use the water taps and the dusting cloths we found in the kitchen cupboard. If the caretaker had looked more closely, in fact, he would see that the kitchen counters were somewhat shinier than they should have been in an empty house. But he didn't. He never even noticed the small corner of the glass missing out of the back window. And all winter, far into the night, we read books and practiced writing.